The last glass slipped from Connor Mackenzie's fingers as thunder cracked above the rusty anchor. 11:30. Rain lashed the windows of the empty bar, each drop like bullets against glass. In the corner booth sat a woman who didn't belong. Designer suit torn at the shoulder, golden hair cascading over her face like a broken waterfall. Her manicured fingers trembled around an empty vodka bottle. Mascara carved black rivers down porcelain cheeks. She lifted her head, revealing eyes the color of winter storms. Beautiful, devastating, haunted. "You still here?" she whispered, voice cracking like thin ice. Connor's chest tightened. Outside, her silver BMW gleamed under flickering streetlights, abandoned keys glinting on the mahogany bar. 8-year-old Beatrice waited at home, trusting Daddy to always come back. But something about this stranger's shattered elegance made him pause. Something about the way she looked at him. Not through him, but into him. Like she could see every scar he'd spent 3 years hiding. What Connor didn't know was that in 7 hours, this broken woman would speak words that would crack open his soul and change everything he thought he knew about second chances. Connor moved closer, his work boots silent against worn floorboards. The scent of expensive perfume mixed with whiskey and rain created an atmosphere thick with unspoken stories. She tried to stand, wobbled dangerously, then gripped the table edge until her knuckles turned bone white. "I can call someone for you," he offered, voice steady despite the way his pulse hammered against his throat. Her laugh sounded like crystal shattering against concrete. "Call someone? There's no one left to call." The words hung in the smoky air, heavy with meanings he couldn't begin to decipher. Bills scattered across the wet table when she fumbled through her purse, 50s and 100s, more money than Connor saw in a month of bartending. "Keep it," she slurred, pushing the cash toward him with shaking fingers. "For your trouble." Connor's jaw tightened as he slid the money back across scarred wood. He'd been taking care of drunk strangers for 5 years, but none had ever looked at him like this woman did, like he was simultaneously salvation and destruction, wrapped in denim and exhaustion. Lightning split the sky outside, illuminating her face in stark black and white. For one impossible moment, she looked almost ethereal. "I don't want your money," Connor said quietly, his voice cutting through the storm's fury. "But I can drive you home." She stared at him for what felt like hours, those winter storm eyes searching his face for deception or pity. Finding neither, her shoulders sagged with something that might have been relief. "You don't know what you're offering," she whispered, but reached for her coat anyway. Cashmere that had seen better days, torn at the elbow and stained with mud. Whatever had brought her to the rusty anchor tonight hadn't been planned. The drive to Penmore Drive took 20 minutes through empty streets lined with century-old oaks that creaked like old bones in the wind. She pressed her forehead against cold glass, breath fogging the window as rain drummed overhead. When they pulled into the circular driveway of a massive Victorian mansion, she didn't move to get out. "Thank you," she said finally, voice barely audible above the storm. "I haven't had anyone do something kind for me and—" She trailed off, shaking her head. "You probably have a family waiting." Connor thought of Beatrice sleeping peacefully among stuffed animals, her dark hair spread across princess pillows. "Just my daughter," he admitted, surprising himself by sharing something so personal. "She's 8. The woman turned to really look at him then, and something shifted in her expression. Recognition of a fellow survivor, perhaps. "What's her name?" she asked with genuine curiosity. "Beatrice. She's everything." The woman smiled for the first time all night, transforming her face completely. "That's beautiful, old-fashioned, strong." cold air rushed in as she opened the door. "Take care of her, Connor Mackenzie." She knew his name. Connor sat in his idling truck, watching the Gothic mansion swallow her like a hungry mouth. He'd never told her his name, yet she'd spoken it like a prayer. Rain continued its assault on the windshield as questions multiplied in his mind. Something about tonight felt like a turning point, though he couldn't say why. Maybe it was how she'd looked at him, really seen him, for the first time in 3 years. Or maybe it was simpler. Maybe it was just the first time someone had needed him for something other than fixing engines or pouring drinks. Sunday morning arrived grey and drizzling, the kind of weather that made the whole world look washed out and tired. Connor was scrambling eggs for Beatrice when the doorbell rang at 7:15, early for visitors, especially on weekends. Through the peephole, he saw her transformed. Gone was the torn designer suit, replaced by simple jeans and a white cotton shirt. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, face scrubbed clean of makeup. She looked younger, more vulnerable, like someone who'd spent the night remembering how to be human again. "Daddy, who is it?" Beatrice called from the kitchen, curiosity bright in her 8-year-old voice. Connor opened the door to find the woman holding a white bakery box tied with string. "I brought donuts," she said simply, her smile warmer than last night's broken desperation. "I wanted to thank you properly, and apologize if I said anything inappropriate. I wasn't exactly myself." Beatrice appeared at Connor's elbow, still in cartoon cat pajamas, hair defying gravity in impossible directions. The woman's expression softened when she saw the little girl, face transforming with wonder at pure innocence. "You must be Beatrice," she said, crouching to the child's eye level with practiced ease. "I'm Sam. Your daddy helped me last night when I was having a very bad day." Beatrice stepped closer with fearless concern that only children possessed. "Did you get hurt?" she asked with simple directness. Sam's eyes flickered to Connor before returning to Beatrice. "A little bit," she answered honestly. "But not the kind that shows on the outside, the kind that lives in here." She touched her chest lightly, over her heart. Beatrice nodded solemnly, accepting this explanation completely. "Daddy has that kind of hurt too," Beatrice announced matter-of-factly, making Connor's breath catch. "But he doesn't like to talk about it. Do you want to come in? We're having eggs, but they're probably cold now." Connor found himself stepping aside, letting this stranger into their carefully ordered world. Sam followed Beatrice to the kitchen, admiring artwork covering the refrigerator and listening with genuine interest as Beatrice explained her butterfly project. "They go into cocoons all broken down," Beatrice said seriously, spreading jam with surgical precision. "Then they come out completely different, but prettier." Sam's hand stilled on her coffee cup, something flickering across her face. Pain, hope, recognition dancing together. "I think," she said carefully, "sometimes people have to break apart completely before they can figure out who they're supposed to be." Beatrice considered this with philosophical gravity. "That makes sense," she decided. "Daddy was all broken when Mummy died, but he put himself back together for me. He's different now, but still good. Maybe even better, because he knows how to be sad and happy at the same time." The words hit Connor like physical blows, not cruel, but devastatingly true. From children came wisdom that adults spent lifetimes seeking. Sam watched him over Beatrice's head, her eyes reflecting understanding, not just of his pain, but of her own journey through darkness. They were both refugees from former lives, both learning to exist in the after. "Your daughter is remarkable," Sam said quietly. "She sees things clearly." Connor nodded, throat tight with emotion. "She always has. Sometimes I think she's raising me instead of the other way around." Monday morning brought familiar routines and unexpected revelations at Henderson's general store. Connor was installing a new transmission when he heard the front door chime. Through the service bay window, he watched Sam talking earnestly with old Henderson, her hands gesturing as she explained something important. She wore khaki pants and a blue polo shirt that suggested job hunting. Henderson's weathered face showed surprise, then something deeper, recognition that reached back decades. "I'll be damned," Connor heard him mutter through thin walls. Little Sammy Reeves, all grown up. Reeves. The name struck Connor like a bell, resonating with half-remembered stories from childhood. The Reeves family had been Millbrook royalty once, before the town became a forgotten dot between somewhere and nowhere. They'd owned the lumber mill, the bank, half the real estate in the county. But that was 20 years ago, before Connor had reasons to pay attention to local history. Before his world narrowed to the space between home and work, and careful tending of broken hearts. Sam emerged from Henderson's office wearing a name tag and carrying keys that marked her as Millbrook's newest employee. She saw Connor through the window and waved with such normal friendliness that his chest tightened with unnamed wants. Hope, maybe, or the terrifying possibility that life might contain more than careful management of grief and responsibility. The rest of the week fell into patterns that felt almost like normalcy. Connor stopping for morning coffee, Sam learning small-town commerce rhythms, both of them dancing around growing attraction with careful politeness. Wednesday afternoon brought Beatrice's first solo walk to the store, a privilege she'd lobbied for since turning 8. Connor found them in the back corner, Beatrice cross-legged on the floor showing Sam homework, while munching an unpaid-for cookie. "Miss Sam helped me with fractions," Beatrice announced proudly. "She's really smart about math and everything." Sam's cheeks flushed pink at the praise, like someone unaccustomed to being seen as capable or valuable. Through 8-year-old eyes, Sam was learning their life's intimate details. Bedtime routines, favorite foods, the small rebellions that made them family. "The festival's next month," Beatrice explained between cookie bites. "They have duck races in the pond, and Daddy lets me stay up late for fireworks, even though it's a school night." Connor felt heat rise in his cheeks as their private traditions became public knowledge through innocent chatter. "I'd like to see it," Sam said, voice suggesting she meant more than just the festival. She meant their life, their world, the careful ecosystem built from love and loss and determination to keep moving forward. "We'd like that," Connor replied, meaning it completely. Friday evening arrived painted in golden light that made even tired Millbrook look magical. Connor had invited Sam for dinner. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and the easy conversation that felt natural between them. Sam brought garden flowers arranged in a mason jar like precious orchids. Over dinner, fragments of her story emerged like puzzle pieces, slowly clicking into place. She'd lived in Chicago and New York, worked in business consulting that paid well, but left her feeling hollow inside expensive clothes that never quite fit right. "I kept thinking I'd figure out who I was supposed to be if I just worked hard enough," she said, twirling pasta with careful concentration. But success felt like wearing someone else's life. It never quite fit. Beatrice built architectural marvels from breadsticks while adults navigated deeper waters. "What brought you back?" Connor asked, sensing the answer might carry sharp edges. Sam glanced at Beatrice before responding carefully. "Sometimes you have to go backward to go forward. I needed to remember who I was before I became who I thought I should be." After dinner, they walked to the neighborhood park, where Beatrice claimed the swings and demanded pushes higher than the moon. Sam laughed as she complied, face tilted toward darkening sky where first stars appeared like tiny promises. Connor watched them together, his daughter and this woman who'd stumbled into their lives like an answer to prayers he'd never dared voice. "Miss Sam knows about constellations," Beatrice called excitedly. "She showed me the Big Dipper and everything." Sam's voice carried sadness when she explained, "My father taught me. He said no matter how lost you get, stars will always help you find your way home." The following week brought changes that would shatter their fragile peace. Connor was replacing brake pads when a black Mercedes pulled up to Henderson's store, chrome gleaming like a threat in afternoon sunlight. The man who emerged wore authority like expensive cologne. Silver hair, perfectly styled, suit that probably cost more than Connor made in 6 months. Through the service bay window, Connor watched him stride into the store like he owned everything in sight. Within minutes, raised voices carried even over Henderson's radio, and Sam's face went pale as winter through the glass. The argument lasted 20 brutal minutes. When the expensive stranger finally left, tires squealing against asphalt in barely contained rage, Sam remained frozen behind the counter, like someone who'd seen ghosts she'd hoped were buried. Connor found himself walking into the store without clear purpose, driven by concern that felt suspiciously like love. "Everything okay?" he asked, knowing it wasn't, needing to offer whatever comfort he could provide. Sam's smile was brittle as old paper, her hands shaking as she straightened merchandise that didn't need attention. "Just a disagreement about business practices," she said, voice steady despite trembling fingers. "Some people think intimidation works better than honest negotiation." Connor wanted to ask more, wanted to understand why a stranger in an expensive car could reduce this strong woman to fear. But customers waited, and Henderson watched with sharp eyes that had seen enough trouble to recognize its approach. That evening, Connor drove past Sam's house. Not stalking, just concerned in the way people who cared were allowed to be. Every window blazed with light, as if she were trying to banish shadows through sheer electricity. Thursday morning brought news that changed everything. Henderson's general store was being sold to Morrison Development, a company from Columbus that specialized in replacing small-town character with corporate efficiency. The buyer intended to demolish the building and construct a chain pharmacy that would serve suburban sprawl creeping outward from the city. "Progress," Henderson said with bitter irony, taping the for sale sign to his window. "That's what they call destroying something that's worked perfectly for 70 years. Connor felt the news like a physical blow to his carefully constructed stability. "What about Sam?" Connor asked, though he already knew the answer from Henderson's resigned shrug. "She'll find something else," the old man said without conviction. Jobs weren't plentiful in Millbrook, especially for women with mysterious gaps in their employment history. Connor found Sam cleaning out her desk with mechanical efficiency, personal items reduced to a coffee mug, a family photograph, and a lighthouse paperweight. "I'm sorry," he said, meaning it in ways that extended far beyond job loss. She looked up with eyes that held too much knowledge of disappointment. Over the following days, Connor watched Sam's careful optimism crumble under repeated rejections. She applied everywhere: the diner, gas station, insurance office, each turn-down delivered with apologetic explanations about limited budgets and uncertain futures. Millbrook was dying slowly, its young people fleeing to cities that offered more than nostalgia. Beatrice asked why Miss Sam looked sad all the time, her child's sense of justice offended by good people suffering for no apparent reason. "Sometimes bad things happen to good people," Connor explained inadequately. "And all we can do is be kind and hope things get better." Saturday morning brought Derek Lawson to Connor's front door, while Beatrice attended a birthday party, and streets lay quiet under weekend peace. Connor answered to find a man radiating confidence that came from never doubting his place in the world's hierarchy. "Mr. Mackenzie," Derek said, extending a hand Connor didn't take. "I think we need to discuss Samantha Reeves." The deliberate use of Sam's full name signaled knowledge Connor didn't possess. Cards he hadn't known were in play. "I'm not sure that's any of your business," Connor replied, but Derek's smile suggested otherwise. "Miss Reeves hasn't been entirely honest with you," Derek continued smoothly, voice carrying authority of someone accustomed to delivering unwelcome news. "About who she is, where she's been, why she's really here." Connor felt familiar weight settling in his chest, the gravity of impending loss that preceded every conversation like this one. Derek reached into his briefcase, withdrawing a folder thick with documents, photographs, and legal papers bearing official seals. "Samantha Reeves is not some down-on-her-luck woman seeking fresh starts," he said, spreading evidence across Connor's kitchen table. "She's sole heir to one of Central Ohio's largest real estate fortunes." The revelations hit like physical blows, each one reshaping everything Connor thought he knew. The woman who'd shared dinner with his daughter, helped with homework, learned cash register operation like she'd never seen money. That woman was apparently richer than anyone in Millbrook had ever dreamed of being. "You're lying," Connor said weakly, but pieces were falling into place. The expensive suit, Henderson's recognition, the mansion on Penmore Drive where she lived alone in rooms that could house dozens. Derek's expression might have contained genuine regret beneath professional necessity. "My family has managed the Reeves estate for 20 years," Derek explained patiently. "Since Samantha's parents died in a car accident when she was 16. She suffered significant head trauma, lost most childhood memories. We've been protecting her interests, managing assets, keeping her safe from people who might exploit her condition." Connor stared at documents while his mind struggled to reconcile the Sam he knew with the heiress Derek described. If she was wealthy, why work at Henderson's store? Why live like someone counting every dollar? "Because she doesn't remember," Derek said softly, reading Connor's confusion. "Doctors said her memory might return gradually or never at all. We decided to let her believe the family fortune was lost in bad investments, that she was essentially orphaned and penniless. It seemed kinder than burdening her with responsibilities she couldn't handle." The supposed kindness felt like acid on Connor's skin. "So you've been lying to her for 20 years," he said, anger building like steam under pressure. "Letting her think she's poor while you manage her money and make decisions about her life." Derek's expression hardened slightly, revealing steel beneath polish. "We've been protecting her from fortune hunters and con artists who would exploit her condition. People like you, Mr. Mackenzie." The accusation hung between them, ugly and pointed. "Did you really think a woman like Samantha would choose a mechanic with 3 part-time jobs? Did you honestly believe she'd pick this life if she knew what alternatives were available?" Each word found its mark, piercing carefully constructed hopes with surgical precision. Of course Sam wouldn't choose his life if she knew she could have anything. Of course their relationship was built on incomplete information. Derek produced another set of documents bearing law firm letterheads Connor didn't recognize. "Samantha turns 37 next month," he explained with diagnostic patience. "According to her parents' will, that's when she gains full estate control, with or without recovered memories. We'd hoped her condition would improve, that she'd remember her inheritance and responsibilities. But time is running out, and there are complications. Those complications involved distant relatives who'd waited 20 years for their chance at Reeves' money, business partners whose investments depended on promises that might prove worthless if Samantha chose to exercise full legal rights. "What does this have to do with me?" Connor asked, though he suspected he already knew. Derek's smile was sharp as winter wind. "You've become a complication, Mr. Mackenzie. Samantha has grown attached to you and your daughter. She's talking about staying in Millbrook permanently, building a life here. That wasn't part of our plan. The plan involved gradually reintroducing Sam to her former life, helping her remember her place in society, guiding her back to relationships she'd left behind. She was engaged before the accident, Derek said, producing a photograph of Sam in wedding dress beside a man who looked like expensive watch advertisements. Connor stared at the image, feeling his world shift and reshape around new information. The Sam in the picture looked different, polished, sophisticated, comfortable in luxury she wore like second skin. She looked happy, but with the happiness of someone who'd never questioned whether she deserved good things. "What do you want from me?" Connor asked, though the answer was becoming clear. Derek reached into his jacket, withdrawing a check with figures that made Connor's vision blur. $100,000, more than he'd see in 5 years of honest work, enough to transform Beatrice's future completely. "Help us help Samantha remember who she really is," Derek said reasonably. "Encourage her to seek treatment for memory issues. Support her decision to return to her real life with people who understand her background." The words sounded logical, presented with smooth authority of someone who'd never doubted his right to make decisions for others. Connor picked up the check, feeling its weight like stone in his palm. "And if I don't?" Derek's shrug was elegant, dismissive. "Then you'll be complicit in denying Samantha her birthright, preventing her from recovering memories and reconnecting with real family." The manipulation was masterful, wrapping selfishness in sacrifice's language and presenting cruelty as kindness. Connor understood he was being expertly played, his weaknesses identified and exploited with surgical precision. But understanding the game didn't make resistance easier, especially when stakes involved Beatrice's future and his growing feelings for a woman who might not even be who he thought she was. "I need time to think," Connor said finally, setting the check down like it might bite. Derek nodded graciously, gathering papers with practiced efficiency. "Of course, but don't take too long. Samantha's birthday is in 3 weeks." After Derek left, Connor sat alone, staring at the check and documents that had rewritten everything he thought he knew about love and second chances. The woman he'd fallen for, and he could admit now that he'd fallen completely, was not who she seemed. She was wealthy beyond imagination, connected to a world he couldn't understand, engaged to someone who could give her everything she'd lost and more. But she was also the woman who'd helped Beatrice with homework, learned cash register operation with patient determination, looked at him like he was worth seeing clearly. That evening, Beatrice returned from the birthday party with chocolate cake on her dress and stories about games and sugar-fueled chaos. Connor listened with half his attention, the other half consumed by Derek's impossible choice: tell Sam the truth and lose her to a world where he couldn't follow, or keep silent and live with knowledge that their relationship was built on sand. "Daddy, you look sad," Beatrice observed with direct perception that made her both blessing and burden. "Did something bad happen?" He pulled her onto his lap, breathing in childhood innocence and terrible responsibility. "Just grown-up stuff," he said, the kind of non-answer that satisfied children temporarily. By morning, Connor had made his decision. He would tell Sam everything, about Derek's visit, about documents, about the life she'd forgotten and fortune that was rightfully hers. She deserved truth, deserved to make choices based on complete information rather than carefully edited reality Derek's family had fed her for 20 years. Whatever happened after, at least it would be her decision. But when Connor arrived at Sam's house Sunday morning, prepared for the most difficult conversation of his life, he found her loading boxes into her car with mechanical efficiency of someone who'd stopped fighting. "I'm leaving," she said without looking at him, voice flat and emotionless. "Going back to Chicago. There's nothing for me here." The words hit Connor like slaps, not because they were cruel, but because they were wrong in every way that mattered. "That's not true," he said, stepping closer despite hurt radiating from her like heat. "Beatrice cares about you. I care about you. This is your home now, Sam. You belong here." She finally looked at him, and Connor saw something broken in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "No," she said quietly. "I don't belong anywhere. I've been fooling myself, thinking I could build a life from borrowed time and other people's kindness. But Derek was right. It's time to stop playing house and face reality." Derek had reached her first, Connor realized with sick certainty. While he'd hesitated and considered consequences, Derek had simply acted. "What did he tell you?" Connor asked, though he could guess the broad outlines. Enough truth to hurt, enough lies to manipulate, enough fear to drive her away from complications that might interfere with Derek's plans. "Does it matter?" Sam asked, closing her trunk with unnecessary force. "He told me who I really am, what I really am. A damaged woman with a fortune I don't remember earning, and a fiancé I don't remember loving. Everything else has been make-believe." Her words were bitter as medicine, delivered with precision of someone who'd rehearsed them all night. Connor felt desperation claw at his chest, familiar panic of losing something precious before understanding its value. "Sam, please," he said, reaching for her hand. "Let me explain. Derek came yesterday, and I think he's lying about what you want, what you need." She pulled away like his touch burned. "How would you know what I need?" she asked. "You've known me for 2 weeks. Derek's family has been taking care of me for 20 years. The words were Derek's. Connor could hear his authority in every syllable. But they came from Sam's mouth, making them weapons that cut deeper than any stranger's manipulation. 2 weeks, Connor repeated, tasting inadequacy of such small time to build a life around. "But they've been good weeks, Sam. They've been real. Whatever else is true about your past or money or obligations, these weeks have been real." Sam's expression softened slightly, revealing the woman he'd fallen in love with beneath the polished surface Derek had restored. "They have been real," she admitted. "That's what makes this hard. For 2 weeks I got to pretend I was someone worth loving for myself, not for what I could provide or represent. I got to be normal." Connor felt words torn from deep in his chest. "You are worth loving. Not because of money or position or anything Derek thinks matters. Because you're kind and strong and patient with 8-year-olds who ask too many questions. Because you see people clearly and treat them with respect. Because you make the world better just by being in it." For a moment Sam wavered, and Connor thought he might have reached her, might have pierced the armor Derek had helped her build. But then she shook her head, stepping back toward the safety of her car and predictable pain of a life lived according to others' expectations. "I can't," she said simply. "I can't risk hurting you or Beatrice when I figure out who I'm supposed to be. You deserve better than someone who's broken." Connor stood in her driveway long after her taillights disappeared, feeling familiar weight of loss settle over him like a blanket he'd never learned to shed. 3 weeks later, Connor received an envelope with no return address, postmarked from Chicago. Inside was Derek's check, torn into precise pieces, along with a note in Sam's careful handwriting. "Thank you for showing me what kindness looks like. Thank you for helping me remember that I'm worth more than my worst moments. I hope someday I'll be brave enough to choose love over fear. Take care of Beatrice. She's lucky to have you. S." Connor sat surrounded by fragments of $100,000, realizing Sam had made her choice after all. Not Derek's choice, not Connor's hoped-for choice, but her own choice made with full knowledge of costs and benefits. 6 months passed like seasons changing, bringing transformation to Millbrook and the Mackenzie family. Henderson's store became a parking lot serving the new chain pharmacy. Connor found work at a highway garage where pay was better, but customers were strangers, and Beatrice thrived in 4th grade while asking fewer questions about when Miss Sam might return. Life continued carrying them forward into a future that looked different from what they'd briefly imagined, but was nonetheless rich with small moments of joy and connection. On a Sunday morning when dogwood trees bloomed and air was soft with spring's promises, Connor and Beatrice were walking home from church when a familiar car pulled beside them. Connor's heart stopped, then restarted in a rhythm that felt like hope and terror dancing together. Sam stepped out, not the BMW or Honda, but a simple blue sedan suggesting practical choices and carefully considered priorities. She looked different, more settled in her own skin, hair shorter, clothes more casual, smile tentative but genuine. "Hello, Connor," she said, then knelt to Beatrice's level. "Hello, sweetheart. You've grown so much." Beatrice launched herself into Sam's arms with fearless affection, chattering about school and friends and the butterfly garden they'd planted in their backyard. Sam listened with patient attention, Connor remembered, eyes bright with tears she didn't try to hide. When Beatrice paused for breath, Sam looked up at Connor with an expression carrying 20 years of questions and 6 months of answers. "I remember everything now," she said simply. "My childhood, my parents, the accident, the money, the engagement, all of it. Derek was telling the truth about most things, but not about what mattered most. He was wrong about what I needed, what I wanted, what would make me happy." She stood slowly, still holding Beatrice's hand like an anchor. "I want to come home," she said. "If you'll have me. If there's still room in your life for someone who took too long to figure out that love isn't about deserving or earning or being perfect." Connor looked at his daughter, who was practically vibrating with excitement, then back at Sam, who was offering him everything he'd thought he'd lost forever. "There's always room," he said, voice rough with emotion. "There's always been room." As they walked toward home together, Connor and Beatrice and Sam, not quite a family yet, but something precious and new. Connor thought about butterflies and transformation, about courage required to break apart completely before becoming something beautiful. Some stories didn't have endings, he realized. They had new beginnings, and sometimes that was more than enough.